Hello, welcome back to Eclectic Creation, and here's what's cooking. Today we're going to do a Sherry's version of pepper chicken and broccoli. I don't know, chicken broccoli maybe, but I'm going to do a little bit of pepper chicken, and I'm just using what I have at the house. We're not big on Asian food because I don't cook it very well, so when we want Asian food, we just go out to eat Asian food. But today I'm just going to attempt some blackened chicken, peppered chicken with some broccoli. And let's get started. I've got my pan searing up right here. I've got the big boy out today. We're going to be using the big boy because little mama, I made some yogurt yesterday and I haven't taken the yogurt out of little mama yet. So we're just gonna put the big boy to work today. So let's go ahead and get started. I've already got my pan heated up, and I've already cut up some onions and some bell peppers. I've used 2 bell peppers, a whole onion, and a tablespoon of garlic. So let's go ahead and just put this in here. Ooh, hear that sizzle. Hear that sizzle. Love, 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 love that sound. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and put this down now so you can see what's going on in the pot, because that's what matters. All right, let's see. There we go. Okay, so I've got my saute on. Oops, I guess I turned it off. I've got my saute on, so I'm gonna let that just heat up again, let that saute for a minute. And while that's sauteing up, I'm gonna go ahead and season up my chicken. This has been soaking in some peanut oil. I love peanut oil, always cook with peanut oil, and because I want it to get a quick brown sear and I want it to be juicy, I just use peanut oil. So I've got it soaking in some peanut oil here, and now that I don't have a lot of peanut oil, it's just a little bit, and it was kind of frozen when I cut it up, because it was kind of frozen when I did it because I like to cut it a little bit frozen. I can't stand slimy chicken touching it. So I cut it a little bit frozen so I don't get so much of the slime, and it's really easier for me to cut. So what you see a lot of is just probably the water just separating from the oil. So let's go ahead and season it up. I've got about a tablespoon and a half of pepper. So I'm going to just put that in there. Not all of it, just a little bit of it. And you're gonna vary the pepper to your taste, because I've got 2 in the house that are not pepper fans. I love pepper, but I can eat everything pepper. But so, and that's kind of what, you judge on yourself, what your family likes. I'm gonna go ahead and just put the whole tablespoon and a half in there, so that way it will be nice and peppery. And before it's over, I bet I use more. All right. And so I've got my saute on, letting it heat up, get hot. I had it on and then I turned it off, and now it's taking a little bit longer to, it's like, make up your mind, girl. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of salt, and I'm not gonna put a lot of salt because I will be using soy sauce, and so I just don't want a lot of salt in there. And then some garlic powder. Even though I put cut garlic in there, I still want some garlic powder on the meat. We're gonna just let that soak. Set that aside for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and put some sesame seed oil in here now. I did put peanut oil, just a little bit, just to get it, but I'm gonna go ahead and put some sesame seed oil. Love this stuff. And I'm also gonna make sticky rice with it, but we'll get to the rice in just a minute. Let's get the chicken started first. Okay, so I'm letting this heat up again. I'm gonna let that get hot. In the meantime, I'm going to put some soy sauce in my chicken mix right here. And I'm sorry, I don't measure. I just go to what I think is best. I kind of know my family's taste. And so I just kind of know what I want it to taste like. And that's just how you'll have to gauge. If they like a lot of soy sauce, then, put the soy sauce if that's the star ingredient. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put some teriyaki. And you know, if you have Hussein sauce, or we don't eat those sauces in the house, this is my staple, and I'm just going with my staple, and I'm gonna modify it because it's not gonna really be an Asian, it's gonna be Sherry's form of Asian. And so there I've got teriyaki in the mix right there. And you put a little bit more teriyaki. And I've got sesame seed oil in here, so I'm not going to put any more in the chicken because I got my peppermint. I got my peanut in there. So now this baby's getting hot, and I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit more pepper in here. And then just, and you don't want to use fine pepper. You want to either buy the whole pepper and mortar it, or you want to buy this and use the machine. I prefer, when making the peppered stuff, whether it be pepper chicken, pepper beef, whatever, I prefer using the whole pieces, and then I'm using my marble mortar to break that up. I wish you could smell it because it smells so good. I'm telling you, they've got to come up with smell-o-vision. Somebody has got to just come up with some smell-o-vision because this is deliciously smelling. Okay, so it's getting hot. I'm gonna let it sit just a little bit longer, let it get a little bit hotter. Maybe put a little bit more sesame seed in there. I don't want it too sesame because it is, it's a very powerful, so you don't really need a lot because it has a very powerful taste. All right, so it looks like it's hot enough. So now I'm going to, and in case y'all did not know, let me show you a trick real quick. In case y'all did not know, see that right there? Whoa, what happened? I unplugged my light, but anyways, let me just plug that right back in so that way y'all can see me better. All right, there we go. So, see right there? Ooh, look at that bad boy. You can actually put your lid, see this little thing? You can actually insert that right there, and wow, you have your lid holder. So that way, if you have a small amount of room like I do, it's not taking up a lot of space. But now you can't fold it. You have to pick it up, take it out, and put it on the lid. You can't force it down or else you'll break the handles. Okay, so just wanted to show you that neat little tip right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and put that in there. Get this, and I'm just gonna let that brown for just a minute. And now, why do we saute? Okay, so let's talk about saute for a minute. One of the reasons why we saute our meat is because, or our vegetables, is because we're trying to seal in the flavor. When you saute something, it's like using your frying pan. It's like cooking on a stovetop. When you're putting that meat in there, or when you're, you know, getting your brothers, when you use your onions or whatever, your vegetables, and you get that frying pan nice and hot, and you throw that stuff in there with butter or oil or however it is that you do it, and you're sauteing those vegetables. Well, that's the same concept with using the saute button on your Instapot. You use the saute button because you're gonna seal in that taste. You know, it's not really gonna cook your meat per se as it would on the frying on a frying pan on the stovetop, but it's gonna give it that brown kind of crisp, that brown, you know, that I guess burnt, or you know, coating of that first when the heat hits the meat, and it just gives it that nice little coating, and it kind of helps seals in the flavor of the meat. So when you're pressure cooking in it, you still get to seal in that meat, and you get that little bit of a burnt taste, or I don't really know how to explain it, but that's the purpose of the saute button. I know that a lot of people ask, why do you saute? What is the saute? How do you use it? If you're not used to an Instapot, don't be afraid of your Instapot. Learn how to work those buttons because it's very simple. It's a whole lot easier than what you would think it is. It's a great way to cook a family meal in a matter of no time. That's delicious, that's healthy, that's great, and less dishes to wash, and you can get it, you can dump it and go. And so don't be afraid of your Instapot, because really your Instapot is going to be your number one favorite kitchen item. I've got 3 of them and I use them all the time. Every day I'm either using 1 or 2. So don't be afraid. You know, the buttons, the rice buttons, the saute, I mean, the really buttons only you want to worry about is the saute button. If you do yogurt, the yogurt button. And if you're not making yogurt yet, you need to be, because it is the best. Oh, I love the homemade yogurt, and it tastes so much better than store-bought. I made some caramel yogurt yesterday, and oh my gosh, I can make caramel 2 times a week. I mean, I can make yogurt 2 times a week, because we're just going to go through it. It's so good. We eat it. I eat it every morning for breakfast. But anyways, the main 2 buttons that you're going to worry about is either your manual button, which is your pressure cook button, or your saute button, or your pressure cook buttons. Those rest of the things, don't even worry about them, because they're not really set right, and they're just fancy things that you just don't even need to worry about yourself. And one day we'll do a thing on porridge, what porridge is about, because porridge is just a morning cereal. I mean, oatmeal is considered a type of porridge, you know, so grits are a type of porridge. So basically that's what that is. So anyways, now let's get back to this guy. Now that I've got this one ready, okay, you can see that I've sauteed it, and my chicken is getting nice and sauteed or seared just a little bit. Seared's the word. It's getting seared just a little bit. Now, the thing about sauteing first is you want to make sure that you get all the juices off, that nothing is hot and stuck to the bottom, because then your Instapot will not set pressure. It'll say burnt food, and sometimes it'll burn. Now, I've experienced burning food in the big boy, in my 8-quart Dual Viva. I've experienced a little bit of burning, but in my little Mama, the Dual Nova, it just says hot food, and it doesn't really burn the food. So, you know, you just need to make sure that you get all the scrapings off the bottom. And when I've done that, I've realized that I've not had as many issues as I did in the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more teriyaki, because it's, you know, it's not smelling quite as Asian as I want it to smell, and it doesn't just look as dark as I want it to look. And I'm going to go ahead and do that right there. Now, because I am fixing to pressure cook it, I do need to add a little bit of either water or some kind of liquid. In this case, I'm going to use chicken broth. Just a little bit of chicken broth, because I don't want it watery. I do want it in the broth, because I do want the chicken in the liquid, because I am going to make a little bit of a gravy. So I'm just going to do a little bit of chicken broth, and your brand or however you want to do it is or, you know, if you don't use chicken broth and you use a chicken base or a chicken consomme, anything like that is great, just as long, I mean, for me, it's just easier to buy the boxes. So sometimes I'll use a chicken base or a chicken broth or a beef base or beef broth. Okay, so now that I've got that going, I'm going to turn it off, because I do want it to cool down a little bit. I'm going to take my lid off. See, I'm going to take my lid off right here, and I'm going to set it down. Make sure that I'm on I'm on sealing and not venting. This is my Viva, so it doesn't have the automatic. I have to set it automatically. So I'm going to turn my Viva, I'm going to make sure that it's on sealing, and then let's turn it back right here. There it goes. It's locked. Now I'm going to turn it on to pressure cook, and I'm going to do it for 25 minutes. The chickens are already mostly cooked, so I don't really need it to cook that long. I'm just going to cook it for 25 minutes. And in the meantime, while it's cooking, I'm going to be doing two other things. I'm going to be making a slurry with cornstarch, so that way, I don't know, just like a little something slush or something, I don't know, something that will, you know, I'm going to use cornstarch and water and make sure that I can put that in here when this is done and stir that up. Okay, so now this is on. If you're new to Instapot, let's talk about when it comes on. When it comes on, it's not going to go straight into pressure cooking. What it's going to do is it's got to build up first. And you see these little buttons right here? Let's see if you can see these things right here. It's going to build up. Now you got to make sure that it's on sealing and not venting. See this little thing right here? When it starts to build up pressure, that little button is going to start to rise. And just before it sets with its right, its temperature and the timer comes on, this will start spitting out. It'll spew just a little bit, nothing messy, and you'll see it like shaking back and forth because it's about to set pressure. Now, if those things aren't happening very, within 5 minutes or so, you need to make sure that your seal is on properly, that you have this little knob right here, and that nothing is stuck right there. And if it is, believe me, the machine will let you know. It'll start spewing out stuff and acting crazy. It won't act normal. So, but those are, right, what it's doing right now is that it's building pressure, and it usually takes a couple of minutes, and then once it starts getting to the pressure that it's at, the timer is going to come on, and then it's going to cook for 25 minutes. Now, because I'm doing this and I'm going to make a gravy out of it, I'm just going to do I'm going to do a quick release. I'm not going to let it do a natural release. The difference between a quick release and a natural release: a quick release is when I finish cooking it and the timer goes off, I come over here and I turn this to venting, and lets all the pressure out. A natural release is when I let it sit for 10-15 minutes and I let it just release pressure naturally. And then, after 5-10-15 minutes, then I'll come and do that. And some recipes calls for that, some don't. Whether they do or they don't, most of the time I just quick release, just because, I'm quick. I'm usually in a hurry. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and let that sit. I'm going to get some other things ready. Okay, so now let's start the rice. And this is a little baby. This is my 3-quart. And it's also has where you have to turn the thing manually. But again, as I was saying earlier, when it sets to pressure, you'll see that you have to make sure that this is on sealing and not venting. You want to make sure that it's on sealing. And this little thing will come up when it's setting up the pressure. And then you always make sure that your seal, because if your seal is not inserted properly, it's not going to build pressure that you need to build pressure. And a lot of people talk about smell, their things smell. So what you do is, when I store mine, when mine are not in use, I wash them. First of all, I try to wash these off immediately. And I take this out and I wash this real well. And then I will set, when they're drying, they sit like this, and this is loose. I mean, I just set this on top, or sometimes I put it in my drawer. If I know that I'm going to go a couple days without using, because I try to have my meals planned for the week, and I know which machine that I'm using, and if I'm not going to be using the machine for a couple days, then I have a drawer that I put my rings in. But if I know that I'm going to use it that week, then it'll sit loosely on top, and that way the whole thing airs out and you don't have the problem with the smell. Now that works for me. And I live in a very humid area. I live 4 miles off the Gulf Coast in Mississippi, so we're very salty, very humid, and so I, have to be extra careful with mold and stuff like that. Okay, so now let's get started. Now I'm going to make my rice, okay? Now, you can wash your rice if you want. I don't. I've never washed it. I just don't. So sometimes I do, but very seldom do I wash it. But now what I'm going to do is I'm putting a cup and a half of rice in my cooker right here. And I'm really not going to use a whole cup and a half, probably a cup and a quarter, because I don't really need a lot of it. All right, so my big boy has set its time, It's all sealed and it's going. Now, the thing about rice, it has a rice setter, but you don't want to use the rice setter. One, the rice setter, what it does is it cooks for 12 minutes, and you don't want it to cook for 12 minutes. It does not need to cook that long. No matter how much rice you put in here, it does not need to cook 12 minutes. So the best tip that I use, depending on the meal, like with this meal, I want sticky rice. So I'm going to let it cook for 7 minutes because I want it to get sticky. When I just want nice, firm, kind of, you know, nice firm rice, but not raw, but it's still soft and it's just not clumpy together, then I'll let it cook for 4 to 5 minutes. But if I want the sticky rice like I do with this meal, then I'm going to let it cook for 7 minutes. And most of the time I let it cook for 5 to 6 minutes. You just go from there. The most important thing to keep in mind is that you have to cover the entire thing of rice. You cannot let 1 grain of rice be out, because then it gets really hard. So you want to make sure that you cover the entire, that there's no rice sticking, that all of the rice grains are covered. And I'm using half chicken broth because I've got a chicken dinner that I'm going to put the gravy on top. I'm going to put the peppered chicken on top of the rice and serve it with the sticky rice. So I'm going to use chicken broth, and I'm going to use water. I'm using bottled water. Normally I don't use bottled water, but because we've had a hard freeze these last few days because of the Texas weather, and we didn't have any pipes bust, but just weird junk is coming out of our water thing, and we have a well, so I don't really know that I have anything to worry about. But because I'm going to protect my family, I'm using bottled water from now. But normally I just use our tap water because it is straight from the well, and I kind of just like it that way. But now you can see my rice is completely, can you see that? Oops. It's all covered. There's not any rice that's not covered. I'm going to do a little bit of salt, not a lot at all, just a very little, because I've got soy sauce in the other one and I don't want a lot. And then I'm going to do some garlic. Oops, got some garlic there. I'm going to stir that up because I want to make sure that water or liquid is touching every bit of rice. Okay, my seal's on good. So let me put my seal on right there. Now, let's see if I can put this down a little bit. Now, I'm going to not put yogurt. I'm going to do my pressure cook. This is a pressure cook and not a manual. So I'm going to do pressure cook. And it's set at 7 minutes, as you can tell, because I cook rice. I use this for rice often. So I'm just gonna leave it there. It's set on. My thing is on, make sure that my thing is on sealing, and then I'm just gonna leave it there. Now, you can tell that I'm under a cabinet. I hardly ever cook under my cabinets because I don't want the steam to end up warping my cabinets. So when I go to bed, if you're cooking under a cabinet or by a cabinet, when you go to release your steam, if you don't do a natural release, you want to make sure that you are pointing it away from underneath the cabinet, because after continuous and over times of doing that, you're going to eventually warp your cabinets. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to continuously let the pressure out by your cabinet, because you'll end up warping your cabinets. So just keep that in mind, because they are wood, especially if they're wood cabinets. Now if they're metal, I don't think it'll matter. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this part, and we'll be back when it's ready. Okay, so let's get ready to make our thickener for the gravy, because we're going to need it, just because, you know, when you're eating at an Asian restaurant, most of the time the food is, the gravy is not really it's kind of thick. So let's go ahead and make it, it's not really, really thick like gravy, but it is a little bit thicker than just a sauce. So let's go ahead and make some of that real quick. So let me just put this down so you can see what's going on. Okay, so I've got my little, oops, right there. I'm gonna take this off right here, my little bowl. I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of, and this is just a 2 tablespoon measure. So I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and just pour that in there. All right, and you want equal parts liquid and equal parts cornstarch. So I am going to put, let me get my 1 tablespoon. Okay, so I've got my 1 tablespoon right here. We're going to put a little bit of soy sauce. And then I'm going to do a little bit of teriyaki sauce. All right, and I'm going to pour that in there. And then I'm going to do a little bit of water. So there, I've got 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and 2 tablespoons of liquid. So that, let me get a fork real quick. And then we're just gonna stir this up right here. You kind of want to, you know, make sure that you get it all in there nice, and you don't really want that white powdery stuff, because if you leave that white powdery stuff, it won't really dissolve in it really won't dissolve in the when you put it in the pot. So we've got 14 minutes in the pot left, and so I'm gonna let this kind of sit right here and let it kind of just meld together. I've got my broccoli right here. And so when I do the quick release, when the timer goes off and I do the quick release, my rice will have already been done. I will do the quick release and then add the broccoli and the cornstarch mix right there, and dinner's gonna be ready. So we'll see you in about 13 minutes. Okay, so we've got the rice done, and now on the rice, I do let it do a natural release because it just works out better, gives it a better texture, I think, in my personal opinion. So I just let it natural release when I do the rice, but you do what works for you. If you're in a hurry and you don't have time for the natural release, guess what? It's not going to make that big of a difference if you have to do a quick release. So if you're like me and you want to do a quick release on everything like I do, have at it, because it's really not going to matter. It's just a matter of what you like and what works for you. So let's go ahead and get started. Somehow I got grease on my hand, but that's okay. We'll just wipe it off right here. All right, so let's go ahead and open up this big boy right here and see this delicious, man, it smells so good. Now, this is an original recipe. Again, it's just something that I do. I don't usually have a lot of Asian staples around the house. So I just use what I have. And let's take a look inside. Let's see. Oops, let me go ahead and set that right there. Oh, it smells so good. It smells kind of like chicken and broccoli. All right, so there you go right there. You can see that it's kind of soupy and watery. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put this little mix in right here. Pour that in. All right. Let's go ahead and do that right there. And then it is kind of hot, so, but it smells so good, so good, so good. So I'm gonna let that sit in there for a minute. And sometimes I just do a little taste. So today I nailed it. It's spun on the way that I wanted to taste. But if I had too much soy sauce or too much of something else, then I would add just a little bit of Lipton onion soup mix, just to kind of balance it out, because onions and chicken pretty good together. All right, so now let's go ahead and pour some broccoli in here. Now, this is frozen broccoli, and of course, we all know that it doesn't take long for the broccoli to cook. So I am going to do, there's 1 or 2 things that you can do. You can set it to 0 and it does an instant pressure kind of thing, or you can set it for 1 minute. I'm gonna set it for 1 minute, just because gotta put the lid on, right, Sherry? All right, so, and if you find that when you're putting on your lid and it won't turn, it's probably because there's still pressure in there. So you just have to give it a moment, and you have to be gentle with it, okay? Don't try to force something, because then you'll end up hurting yourself or hurting the machine or something. Just, excuse me, give it a minute to let that pressure kind of just go down, and then just be gentle with it right there. So now that I've got my broccoli in there, I'm going to turn it down. I'm going to cancel it because I want it off the warm. I'm going to put my pressure thing on, and I'm just going to go down to 1 minute, because that's all I want is 1 minute. I don't want it in there too long, because you know it's broccoli and I don't want it soggy. Because it's already hot, it should not take that long to build up pressure. So we'll give it a second. I will give it a minute, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we got it all ready now. We've got the rice done. We've got the chicken, pepper chicken, whatever you want to call it, done. This is the rice. This is what it looks like right here. Nice and sticky. So there's the rice right there, and this was 7 minutes, and you can kind of see where it's nice and sticky. No water left, just beautiful. Now you're gonna ask, how much water do you put in? Does it matter? How much rice to water ratio? I know on the stovetop that's very important, but in the Instant Pot, the only thing that matters is that you cover every rice grain, that you just make sure that everything is underwater, and it doesn't matter how much rice, just make sure that everything is underwater, and then cook it from 4 to 7 minutes, however you like it in between that interim of time. Okay, so now let's take a look at this chicken. Oh, excuse me, this, I don't know what to call it, pepper chicken. I don't know what to call it. It's a recipe that I make, and let's just take a look at it. So let me go ahead and open this up right here. Put that right there, and let's take a look. I wish you could smell it. You can smell the teriyaki, you can smell the sesame, and we've got 2. It doesn't have a lot of chicken in it, but there's 2 of us that don't really eat meat. I don't eat a lot of meat, neither does the Grand Princess. So I don't really put a lot of chicken, because she and I are just gonna do the rice and the broccoli and the juice. But anyways, there it goes right there. This is what it looks like right there. And it smells so good. And serve it on your plate with a little bit of lettuce, and you can roll it and have like a little lettuce roll instead of a bread. You can use lettuce to give it an extra crunchy taste, and there you go. You can put peanuts on top of it, you can put cashews on top of it, but that is what it looks like, and it smells so good. I wished you could smell it. I'm telling you, they've got to create smell-o-vision. But anyways, thank you for joining me on Here's What's Cooking Tonight with Eclectic Creations, and we'll see you again soon. Have an awesome day. God bless.